In the fall of 2008, I received a call from a member of the board of directors of a co-op I represent. And she told me that there was a serious bed bug problem in the building. It turns out that it was building-wide in almost every apartment, in the laundry room, in the storage room, and several other common areas of the building. And before they had contacted me, they had tried 2 different exterminators who tried traditional methods, which failed. And they had recently found a company that used a dog that sniffed out the bed bugs, and that had been a success. And they had received the cooperation of almost every shareholder and rent-stabilized tenant in the building for access to the apartments to test whether there were bed bugs. And then, if bed bugs were in fact found, they fumigated the apartment. They packaged up all of the personal property in the building, in the apartment, and then took the personal property off-site, treated it, and then placed it back into the apartment. And this had been very successful. But there were a handful of residents who were not cooperating. And as we delved into it, it turned out that basically these were people. One was a man who was extremely busy in his business life. 2 were elderly women, one of whom was a cooperator, one of whom was a tenant, a stabilized tenant. And they were elderly and not capable of the kind of full-hearted cooperation that was necessary. There was another man who was mentally disabled and had a very difficult time grasping how he fit into the big picture. And all of these people were resisting the efforts to either have the apartments tested initially, or if the tests had come back positive, they resisted cooperating with bagging up all of their personal property and allowing the apartment to be fumigated, and then removing the personal property, treating it, and replacing it in the apartment. So I worked with the board. In this building, we were lucky the board president was a social worker by profession, and she was able to deal with some of the people, what I called the problem people, which turned out to be people with infirmities or elderly who were not physically or mentally able to pitch in and cooperate. And through a series of discussions, the board members were able to gain the cooperation of these parties. I spoke to a couple of them and played some small part in gaining their cooperation as well. And it brought to light the issue of when you have building-wide projects that require cooperation from residents. Not simply a one-time allowing a superintendent access to the apartment, but something like here where there's numerous instances where they had to cooperate and really go far out of their way in bagging up personal property and so forth, and finding another place to live. This board was very smart, where they paid for everything. They didn't put any expenses on the shareholders or residents at all. They paid for the entire fumigation. They paid for the removal of property. They even put a couple into a hotel because they had no place else to go for the couple days that was required to have access to the apartment for fumigation. And this board went so far out of its way that it turned out to be a hugely successful project. And it's now completed. There are no more bed bugs in the building, we hope. It tested positively several weeks ago, or perhaps a couple of months ago. And it pointed out that boards need to understand that not every resident in the building is able to cooperate in ways that the board expects. It's one thing for a 30-something person who has a job and perhaps a family who's a well-functioning, healthy individual, and it's something else for someone who perhaps has a disability or is elderly, or the one gentleman with a mental infirmity. And I think that a board needs, in situations like this, to take the time to truly understand the people in the building. The superintendent can be a huge help in this area. The supers tend to know people who have difficulties maintaining the normal and customary lifestyles. And they can point out problems ahead of time and assist the board. Perhaps the super has a personal relationship with one of these people because, frankly, the super is in the building every day. Board members typically are not. And if you take the time and understand that some of these issues are more complex than what might first meet the eye, you can get the cooperation you need and achieve the result that you set out to do.